From Queen's Park, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MPP Steve Clark, is joining me. We're going to be talking about the housing crisis. Minister Clark, welcome to the program. So, how did we end up in this housing crisis?
Well, thanks, Doreen, for having me on the show, and really appreciate it. Hope you and your family are safe during this pandemic that we're involved in. For years, previous governments have neglected the housing file. When our government took over in 2018, we made the housing supply issue a priority for the government, and I developed over that first year a plan that we called More Homes, More Choice. It was our province's housing supply action plan. It provided a number of regulatory and legislative changes that were implemented in mid-2019. And despite the pandemic, we saw, based on those changes we made in 2019, tremendous increases in building of all types. Locally in Brockville, last year we had about a 46% housing start increase, which was the highest in many, many years. But we also know, because of COVID-19, that it's not enough. We're still, demand has severely outpaced supply. And we're now at a point where we need to look at all three levels of government on what we can do to increase the housing supply. I'll give you one stat, Doreen. In a recent study by Scotiabank, it showed, when comparing Canada with other G7 countries, on a per capita basis, we rank last in housing supply. We're going to need in Canada 1.8 million housing units to get to that average. And of those 1.8 million, Ontario needs 1.2 million. So we are at the bottom in terms of housing supply, regardless of all the things that we've done over the last year. Mm-hmm. So we really are taking an all of government approach. All three levels of government need to roll up their sleeves and work together. And I'm meeting with municipalities. I've got my own housing affordability task force. We're doing everything we can to get a new plan in place that provides even more opportunities. And one of the biggest things that we're finding is we need to build homes faster. It takes too long to go through the municipal permitting process. We need to work with our towns and cities and townships, regions, districts to ensure that there's a robust plan in place. And we've got a number of measures that the Premier and I have announced over the last couple of weeks that will help do that.
And I know that on January 24th, I believe there was 28 million that was also released for the municipal modernization program. So along with giving out the funding, there has also been work that has been done as far as giving municipalities the tools and the resources that are needed. Is that true?
That's true. The announcement that I made on the 24th that you referenced was for Ontario's 405 small, rural, northern, and remote municipalities. It provided $28 million to help find efficiencies, look at providing services jointly with perhaps a neighbor. It really gives them that flexibility. And then for Ontario's largest cities, the Premier and I just announced a $45 million streamlining development approvals fund that will help all of those municipalities look at perhaps digitizing their building process, hiring more inspectors, more planners. It's a very flexible program, as is the Municipal Modernization Fund, to allow a local community to pick a priority that's important to them. I'm obviously encouraging them because I'm not just municipal affairs minister, I'm also the housing minister. Mm-hmm. I'm obviously encouraging all of them to seriously look at the development approvals process in their municipality on trying to streamline it, modernize it, digitize it. The Premier has a great analogy, and that is of a Purelator or a courier package where you can scan the barcode and follow that package throughout its delivery process right to your home. And what we'd like to see and what he'd like to see is municipalities take that same opportunity. So if I was taking out a building permit to maybe build a basement apartment in my house or I'm a developer and I want to build a single family home or a duplex or a triplex, I should be able to follow that building permit through the process to find out whose desk it's on, whether it's the planner or the building inspector, or whether it's an agency like a conservation authority. And I should be able to know where the pinch points are so that we can alleviate those delays. And this is something that the Premier obviously is very interested in because we're using that lean technology, that lean analysis. We've actually created a lean office within the government that we're working with, and they're working with municipalities on ensuring that we can put those processes in place. We've got to be faster. We're in a crisis, and we've got to make sure that we've got all the tools that municipalities need to be successful.
So who would have access to that information if it was digitally provided?
Well, we're encouraging municipalities to make the data public and transparent.
Okay.
You know, I remember when I was a mayor back in the 80s and early 90s in Brockville, I would look at that report every month that I would get on how many building permits that were pulled, both, you know, whether it be commercial or residential or even industrial. And I think more of those data points need to be made public so that citizens, and especially people in the industry, people that are trying to build and create more housing opportunities, have that transparent process. And there are some municipalities, Doreen, that are doing it, and they're doing a great job. And part of the meetings that we've had over the last month with municipalities, both big and small, is trying to showcase some of those best practices, to showcase what other municipalities are doing to break down those barriers so that we can get shovels in the ground faster.
So they can copy. They can more or less copy what's happening there and ensure that, you know, they follow the process. So
absolutely.
What do you consider to be affordable housing? These are words that I'm constantly hearing and seeing and reading. What is affordable housing?
Well, no, and that's a great question, because many people confuse affordable housing with housing affordability. So for example, my housing affordability task force are a list of experts who are giving me advice on how we can build more market housing and how we can fill the gaps with market housing that's needed. And when I use the word housing, or I use the word home ownership, that means something different for different people, right? Somebody is looking for a purpose-built rental accommodation. Someone's looking for a duplex or a triplex or a family-sized condo. And we're seeing, you know, a high going back 30 years for purpose-built rentals. So there's a lot of construction, and it's because of our policies that we've put in. We need to give municipalities more tools. Then there's the issue of affordable housing, which we deal with groups like the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. So county council would get dollars from the province to help with a variety of programs that are in some cases cost shared with the province and the federal government, and some cases are delivered to the municipality, and then they have that flexibility. And this is some of the issues that happen locally, where people question, what happens when the government gives money to the county? Who makes those local decisions? Who decides, whether there's a warming center? Who decides whether there's an affordable rental building? And who decides whether a builder gets a subsidy? Many of those decisions are not made by me as Minister of Housing. They're made by local mayors and local county officials. So, for example, I've given over $6 million during the pandemic to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville under the Social Services Relief Fund, and that money's flexible. And you go back to look at even last year, in total, all the money we've given the United Counties last year was over $9 million, $9.7 million. That's more than the two previous years combined. So there's been a lot of money that we've given to our municipal partners, and we want to encourage them, just like we want to encourage municipalities to be transparent in the building process. We want municipalities, and especially service managers like the county, to be transparent on what they're spending those provincial dollars on. And then finally, Doreen, on the affordable housing side, we also have the federal government as a partner. And our province in Ontario was the first province or territory in Canada to sign on to the National Housing Strategy. We're in the throes of renegotiating that agreement with the federal government. And what we're finding is based on our core housing needs. So go back to that Scotiabank study that says we need 1.8 million homes in Canada, 1.2 in Ontario. I can make the argument, Doreen, to the federal government, and I have many, many times, that based on our core housing need in Ontario, that national housing strategy is shortchanging Ontario $490 million. So I'm going to ask and continue to ask the federal government to pay their fair share. And if they do, if we do get that $490 million, more money will be able to be transferred to local communities. And then those mayors and those county councillors can make the decision on how they're going to spend it. Are they going to spend it in an affordable rental building? Are they going to bolster homelessness supports to deal with encampments? Or there's a variety of things that they can do with the money, but those decisions rest with them. We don't. I don't get on the ground in 444 municipalities and decide how each of them are going to spend the money. We put that tool in their hands, and so having the discussion about housing affordability versus affordable housing, it's a conversation that I, as minister, have each and every day. It's something that we really need people to get their head around.
But it's understandable that you yourself cannot make that decision as to what the mix would be, specifically for, Leeds, Grenville, and Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes, because you're not here, even though it's your riding, you're not here, and it's up to the municipalities to take on that task.
Yeah, and that's true, Doreen, because one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
Like a strategy that works in Brockville might not work in North Grenville, might not work in Westport.
Right.
Like the municipalities within Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes, they're best to make those local decisions with the provincial dollars. And then the other issue with the federal government is they have a very good program that they deal with municipal governments called the Reaching Home program. The problem that I have in Ontario is I have 47 service managers. So service managers like the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville, but yet only 25 of the 47 get federal dollars under the Reaching Home strategy. So for example, Leeds-Grenville doesn't get an annual allocation, although they can apply for project funding, and the federal government might give it to them, they might not. So I'm trying to encourage the federal government to treat every service manager the same. Every service manager should have a predictable fund on Reaching Home, and that's something that we have to we're going to have to put a plan in place.
Mr. Clark, last year I had the opportunity to talk with a person in Athens, and it was about a woman who wanted to have the tiny home that was being built by the EEC. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. So has legislation changed around the availability of being able to build tiny homes, as well as municipalities have the go-ahead and to use what they designate as the land where the tiny homes will be?
The issue that happened in Athens, it has happened in a number of municipalities across the province. And one of the things we did in the ministry was we went out on looking at a fix. So we put a plan in place. So as of January 1st, 2022, we've amended the building code so that tiny home that's built in Brockville, that could be inspected by the Brockville building inspector, that inspection could then be transferred to Athens when that tiny home was placed on its foundation at the end result. So obviously they'd have to still deal with the building inspector out in Athens to deal with the foundation permit, but that permit would carry over. The other issue that's come forward is not just with tiny homes, but with modular housing, where the modular housing is built in one area and then brought forward. So what we've done is, in addition to that building inspector piece that could be transferred from another jurisdiction, we've also allowed the flexibility for virtual inspections. We're dealing with this interview right now. I'm at my constituency office in Brockville. You're in your studio. So we wanted to take that same technology so that someone could FaceTime, use other technology with the plant that would build the modular home, and the building inspector would have confidence that it was being built to the correct standard. So we've just made that change as of January 1st. We're going to be including it and modifying our tiny home guide, which is available on our municipal affairs website at ontario.ca. So there is a guide out there right now that we've created to help people who are interested in building or working on a tiny home. So that's going to be changed. But as of January 1st, that problem that we had between Brockville and Athens which was again widespread in Ontario.
Yes.
It's now being able to be fixed.
Good.
And the building inspector here can have an inspection that transfers to that tiny homes resting place. So it is a very good news story, and it provides that flexibility and also that technology that I think we've come to be able to use more since COVID-19 hit us. So I'm very, very happy that we made that fix.
And what's nice too is that the EEC, of course, is building another tiny home, and there's already been a selection of land in the north end as to where these tiny homes will go. So I mean, it's a win-win situation when you have that availability, and you can the municipality can go ahead and welcome people into a tiny home. Very, very quickly, can we talk about homelessness, because that is an issue. I know that you're saying that's up to the municipalities to decide what they want to do once they are the funding. I do know, I don't know if you have followed at all the Medicine Hat out in Alberta. They had a program out there called Housing First program. It was over a 10-year span. And what they did was they actually eradicated the homelessness within Medicine Hat. It took them, yeah, it did. And anyone who is found on the street now, they're automatically put into the system, and they are not considered homeless anymore. They do deal with it lickety split just like that. And I thought, wow, that's a wonderful model that they have out there. So as far as any other models, have you seen anything similar to that in Ontario?
Absolutely, I have. And before the pandemic, I went to a conference for the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very impressed with their Built for Zero campaign. And I asked them, because there were municipalities, including municipalities in Ontario, on the wall showing that they had a plan in place to eradicate homelessness in their community. And I said, if there was one piece of advice you could give me as minister, what do I need to put in place? And they said, you need to have a by name list. You need to treat people not like a number. Mm-hmm. You need to treat them by their name, mm-hmm. and provide a service plan that meets their individual needs. So I went back to the ministry, and I realized that the previous government had given municipalities the flexibility to do their homeless enumeration. Everybody was all over the map. They all used different systems. So I pressed pause and said, we're going to pause the enumeration. And there was a bunch of people criticized me for that. Mm-hmm. But my belief was we needed to have one common system. Mm-hmm. And I'm so pleased to tell you, Doreen, that as of December 31st, every service manager in Ontario, so all 47 of them, now operate under a by name list. In fact, in Leeds and Grenville, I'm so happy that they've even went one step farther, that they've joined the Built for Zero campaign with the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. So they've actually gone that further step. Yes. And we've seen municipalities really make great strides in using that by name list to be able to provide those wraparound services that people need. And then there's another group that I've come to deal with, a not-for-profit called Indwell, that operates those type of supportive housing units in southwestern Ontario. And I've toured their facilities in Hamilton, in Woodstock. I've turned sod at their facility in Mississauga. You know, they just opened a facility in St. Thomas that actually was targeted to the encampments. And I've asked them every time I've done an event with them, would you consider coming to Eastern Ontario? And they've always been a southwestern sort of Mississauga West not-for-profit. Well, I was pleased to partner with MP Barrett's office. We've had some meetings with them, and they're very interested in coming to Leeds and Grenville, which makes me very, very happy, because they would be the ones, a not-for-profit that would work with the county to provide those services and build a development that could really make a significant dent in the homeless population in our riding. So I'm very pleased, and really the formula is really simple. They need three things. They need political support, which I think they have with MP Barrett and I, and I hope County Council. Public support, which many constituents are familiar with Indwell. They've communicated to me what a great development. Why can't we do this here? Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about that. But we do need staff support, and we need to be able to have a position where county staff and Indwell staff have a common understanding about what this area needs, and then we put a plan in place. It's a not-for-profit, so there would have to be a fundraising component in addition to support from the province.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And from the municipalities. But I'm very, very encouraged that there are groups like Indewell out there who get it. They understand that we've got to have a plan in place for homelessness in our own community. Not to say that the county, I'm not criticizing the county. We have a number of homelessness programs in my ministry, the Chippy program, the Home for Good program. There has been some good work, but there's more work to be done. And Doreen, I'm going to give you one more local example. So Wall Street Village, corner of Wall Street and James Street, was the first file that I opened up when I became MPP in March of 2010. I was the minister in the summer of 2019 who cut the ribbon. 9 years for an affordable housing, a mix of affordable and market housing that never went to a tribunal. It didn't go to the OMB. Not one council opposed it. The council in Brockville deferred some charges, which was very, very helpful. But it still took 9 years. 9 years to get a Wall Street Village built in Brockville where no level of government was against it is ridiculous. And that's the type of problem that I need to help solve so that we can get shovels in the ground faster. But again, I go back to, I can't do it alone. It's a long-term issue that we've got to work with municipalities, the federal government, and all of my brother and sister ministries within government. Everybody has a role to play. And, I'm going to do whatever I can to put a plan in place to knock down those barriers.
It has been a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you for all of this information. Really do appreciate it. And it's like an education because sometimes we don't understand what is happening out there. And I think that you have enlightened people and your constituents. So thank you ever so much and all the best to you.
Thanks, Doreen. Be safe. Be well.